Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first ever episode of the Everything and Nothing Matters podcast. I'm your host, Marco Luponero. And for some episodes now, I'll be talking with some really exciting guests about stuff that has to do with all the new music that we're doing with Luponero. Well, let's get right to it. So my first guest is someone who I've been working with quite a lot, actually, throughout the years. We've been on stage together, doing a musical as actors, both of us. Then I've directed him in another musical. And after that, we've been doing, I've actually been directing you twice, because I directed you also in our music video for Hook that we did with Marco Luponero and the Loud Ones. So I've known you for many years. He is an actor / musician, one of the most together and exciting persons that I know of. For some of you, he doesn't need an introduction. For others, you may do well with this kind of introduction.
I think I need an introduction for sure.
You're also something of a radio personality nowadays, aren't you?
I've been known to talk on Extrem, the channel is called, and also in the podcast Sällskapet.
That's right. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce your name finally.
Oh, yeah.
We have Joel Forsbacka.
Hi.
So before we get into it, I also have to mention your band. You play with this group called Organic.
Yeah.
You want to tell us something about that group? Just to promote yourself shamelessly?
Sure. We're a hip-hop collective. We play what we like to think is organic hip-hop, which mainly focuses on no loops and a lot of analog instruments, a lot of analog sounds. And we are heavily influenced by jazz, soul, funk music, and it started from a project of getting to the roots of beat music, and that brought us from like these old soul records and the originals from samples, like the Amen break and the Amen what are they called, Winston Brothers, and
that's awesome. So also most of the instruments that you use a lot of real instruments in that project as well. We like to we almost always start with drums, always analog drums or real drums. Nice. And we try to use a lot of electric instruments still, like electric bass, but really played and as little MIDI as possible, and wonderful.
So on.
Wonderful. And then you're doing a lot of acting also these days.
Yeah. I'm part of a theater, I guess also a collective or a group it's called Glitcher. I'm one of 6 members, and I guess you would place us in the avant-garde, or at least post-dramatic side of the genre-wise.
Right. Awesome. And you've been touring not only in Finland, you've been touring around,
try to get around in the Nordic countries, and
that's wonderful. So now the reason why I have you here, other than that I think you're a cool dude, you know. So is that when I started planning the new record, I knew I wanted to tap into something that felt current in the world, and it came from my thought that I kind of sensed that today's, especially younger generations, are going through something that in some ways seems similar to what we went through in the 90s when I was a teenager. And because in the 90s, you were suddenly in a situation where everybody lost their jobs and there was no money and everything seemed miserable. And it was mirrored in this what turned out to be a super exciting youth culture, the peak MTV era, where you had seen the whole flashy, glammy movement, and suddenly you just everything, all of that was just thrown in the dirt and became this kind of statement against it with bands like from the whole, the whole grunge thing with bands like Nirvana at the helm of it, and you suddenly it was this thing where everything became just this kind of I give up. We're kind of we're disenfranchised. We're the jilted generation. Everything, and that was kind of like the youth culture, which was really fueling a sort of really nice rebellious energy in the kids in a way.
Sure.
But then, I've been seeing quite a lot of that same kind of stuff growing in youth culture. But then with a very significant difference that I think is that what you see today. There's another form of hopelessness. It's a hopelessness regarding the world, the future of the world. There seems to be this kind of nihilism going through it all, where I'm not sure that where young people anymore find their hopes for tomorrow. And this was a discussion that I had with you when I started writing for the new album, and you had some really nice points that I remember you taking forward about it, because especially in your radio work, a lot of the other things that you do too, but especially in that field of work, you get so much in contact with those younger generations. So I would just like to ask you a bit, from where you stand today. You're still young yourself too, of course. But this, like, how do you look at it? You're in a theater group. You're creating shows that you're going to be touring with. You do all this music with organic, and you tap into these younger generations too. What do you see? If we start there, what do you see in today's world?
Short answer is I think I see division, and it has a lot to do with how the internet what form the internet has taken and started to take, because there's this massive mainstream of the TikToks and the Instagram feeds, and I guess YouTube in some sense. But I think when we talk about subgenres nowadays, it's more about it's about escapism more than it is about defining yourself as an individual.
Tell me something more about that. Escapism instead of defining yourself as an individual. It's like, because there's this radical extreme individualism that we're talking about, but would you regard the time that we live in as a sort of a post-individualism? Like, is that kind of...
I wouldn't. No, yeah, exactly. No,
is that getting eradicated somehow and giving birth to something new, which is just escapism from everything? Or
no, I think this huge demand for being unique has made everyone the same. And that, I guess that's how trends work and how fashion sort of always has been. But with the huge demand of being unique, standing out in some way, a subgenre doesn't have that much grip anymore. Like if I were to go into a high school now and be like, I'm grunge, they'd be like, okay. It's not that the effect has sort of mellowed out because of the saturation of media. And I mean that it is what it is. Markets is like that, and if we sell music, it's gonna turn out like that. In the end, I think. But it does have an impact on young people nowadays. Maybe not. I mean, music as a way of finding your personality or building an identity, I guess, doesn't have that strong effect anymore, I don't think. So it's more about it has the effect of fitting in, being different, so you can fit in, less than being different to not fit in.
It's pretty exciting to think about how long that was a thing, because if we look at like popular music history, and look at the birth of stuff like rock and roll, there was post-war stuff. There was no youth culture before the wars. There was no, you were a kid and then you were an adult, you know? Straight away you became an adult. And then at some point, after the war, especially in the United States, they noticed that hey, we have this whole kind of age group to focus in on that we can sell to, because they're not kids anymore, but they're still not adults. They're like somewhere in between, and they have all these feelings and these raging hormones and stuff happening in them, and they seem to go wild from this certain kind of music, you know. And that was kind of giving birth to a new kind of market, in a sense. So it's not very old either, and tapping into music as a sort of identity shaper, that's also not something that's kind of something that shapes your identity. It's not something that's too old. I don't know how it was in the. I guess that started to become a thing in the 50s, perhaps, you know.
Beatlemania.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that was the first band, basically, that was like an icon, you know.
Although I have heard about, I think it was Franz Liszt, the pianist.
Yeah.
He used to get these sort of, when he did concerts, they also like, it's rumored that ladies threw undergarments at his piano and stuff.
Well,
but
I
that,
wouldn't wonder at all.
That doesn't undermine the fact that would be women, not teenagers.
Yeah, and then there's the thing that was there one guy at that time in the Vienna high school, did he have like a Franz Liszt shirt on him? And I'm a Liszt head. But
oh fuck, you're a Liszt.
Yeah, but I think that the kind of the thing is still something that we, of course, especially in my generation, in yours too, that shaping our identity via music is so big, a big thing. But that's something that's kind of changing shape and
still I am, although you call me young, I am 30 and I might not know. But that's the sort of feeling I have towards the zeitgeist.
Is that like super old? That's like obsolete in today's world. Is it like 30 that you become part of this kind of striving to survive crew?
Yeah. Oh, you're 30.
Wonderful.
I found there's a hard line between 21 and 30.
Absolutely, and then also 30 is not yet like, because I'm much older, so I belong to the crowd where you can be like, well, he's so old that it's kind of fun, you know, but you're still not fun.
And you play the electric guitar?
Yeah, that's like
that's great.
I didn't know that they built those.
Oh, and you're in a band?
Exactly.
That's so fun for
exactly. But a very interesting point that you're making, and so true about the identity. But I would just to get back to that for a second that you said about young people, because they still need to. They need to get their identity from somewhere, right? We all need our identities. So where would you say that a person in today's world, around what do they build that identity? If it's not music that helps them kind of guide themselves in a certain kind of movement or direction, are there other things that do that, you know?
Yeah. I imagine it's social media.
So it's basically what you do on social, or which channels you use, channels you use.
And that would mean that it's sort of you're in the claws of the algorithm in a way. That would mean a similar situation to where you find a band that there's something in the sound that you like, and you maybe a bit hastily you decide I'm gonna be a person that listens to, like I decided to be a prog head.
Exactly.
I didn't love all prog music, and I didn't kind of not understand Rush. But I love Dream Theater, so I was a prog rock guy, and I could decide.
I didn't know that about you. You were a prog rock guy.
Yeah, that's something I just decided to have something.
Have you found Rush later on?
Yeah, I like Rush better than Dream Theater for sure. Oh yeah.
But yeah, that's an interesting point that you take, because then when you decide what you become, kind of that thing,
you can choose.
But then you don't need to even like all of it. But you're much more accepting towards that thing.
Yeah. You could be more open to. I was more open to Rush when I decided I love Dream Theater.
Exactly.
But there's still that. I guess at least the illusion of a choice. Like I could choose to be a prog head or not.
Yeah.
But if I scroll down my phone to find an identity, I don't get to choose.
Exactly.
There's this yes and no and a hard rule about you're wearing tight pants now.
Yeah.
Like that you can't do that.
So where do you see it going? Do you think that well, this one interesting point that was picked up some weeks ago with different people on YouTube and stuff was the thing with the measuring of how many bands there had been on the lists. You heard this thing where they measured the first 5 years of the 80s. I think there was like 146 bands on the British list, like top 3 or top 1 in the top position, something like that.
Yeah.
Then in the first 5 years of the 90s, it was like 2 less. Like there was 143 or 44, something like that.
Music was still group based.
It was still group based to a large extent.
Yeah.
And then they looked at today's, like the 2020s, and it's been 3 weeks during these first 5 years so far. We're not really half there yet, but also almost. And it was like one of those groups was the Beatles. Because it came out the new.
They released the
remix thing, or the unreleased.
So
track.
they hit the charts.
They hit the charts, and then another one was like a compilation of, like, or it was like solo artists doing some kind of Christmas song or whatever it was, something like like a special, radio special. There was
so still artists. Solo artists.
And the third one was Little Mix, the girl band, the Black Magic, Little Mix. You know that song. So, which is, of course, they're a band, but they're not like a band with guitars and stuff. They're like a singing group, like a vocal band. So, and it definitely shows that we're living in a post-band.
Post-band for sure.
Band world. First partial question of that. Do you think there will be a time for bands again? You do think that?
Yeah. I'm a huge believer in the pendulum swinging back and forth.
That gives me much hope and joy. Yeah.
I mean, it's trends, and it's not. We don't leave bands behind. And we haven't left bands behind. People still play in bands. You and me are in a band. Yeah, but
I'm funny old and you're just boring old.
but we're still in. But that's a good point. People don't start bands maybe nowadays. Young people.
That's what I mean, because like for me at least, I started my band. I think it was 94, my first band was in school. We got to play in the music room on Mondays after school, I think it was. But then my first like real band was like some year later, and my whole kind of that second half of my teenage years were just around hanging out at that,
for sure,
in that room, doing everything there. It wasn't always playing. It was like sitting in the couch, listening to cassettes and CDs, listening to radio, talking about bands, other bands coming in, planning some events. We planned a lot of events and stuff like that. But it kind of shaped, that was my social media. That was the place where I went to have all of that kind of social interaction. I think that thing, kids nowadays, it's like, if you get all that social interaction from your phone, do you don't even want to go to places like.
I mean, as old people, we shouldn't underestimate the communal force of social media. I do myself always, and I try to sort of check myself, like that's not real hanging out,
right?
But young people will contradict you, like we hang out, or we play a first-person shooter game, and I love those guys. They're my friends. But still, I do sense longing for community, and a band would be creating a community that wouldn't be. I mean, I think it also has to do with identity. Like, I as my person, me as an individual can belong to an online community and still feel quite alone.
Right.
Because I'm still at home. I might be alone.
Yeah.
And so on. Even though I get that sort of outlet and that sort of connection in a community, I don't know, a forum.
And there's also the fact that when you communicate via, whether that be like a screen or just via video or just chatting or via audio, there are so many kind of all those subtle signals and and things in between that
Yeah.
are left out, the things that you don't see when you're that are there if you're in the same room,
Yeah.
like, you know, and also like, which is interesting to think about, like what will be the future of how you kind of build music together, not only standing by the instruments doing your things, sitting behind the drums, but those small things in between, you know, like thinking about songs, because
Yeah.
that's something that kind of, because I know that a lot of young people and myself too, like you do so much music nowadays, sending it to different towns, cities, and getting your, hey, I got the guitars back today and stuff like that. So there's no, you don't need to be in the same room anymore
No.
to even rehearse. Like
No.
we built a lot of our music that way, that we build the music, and the first times that we really play it together is when we do it live, you know.
Yeah.
We rehearse a bit before the gigs, because a lot of the music that I build in the studio anyway. So
But that would speak to a want to even play live.
you're right. You're
And
right. That's the end goal.
I'm not gonna I don't want to impose, but I'm gonna guess that playing live might not be the financial sort of end goal either. Like,
For me, it is. I get a lot of money.
Yeah,
So
yeah, you do.
I'm really requested, and
no, but I mean, at least when I do gigs,
You're
it's
absolutely
not
right.
for the money.
Of course not. No, it's for the joy of it. You know?
Yeah,
It's-
and sort of believing in that live moment and that
exactly.
The human je ne sais quoi of being in the same room.
Yeah,
and
also something in that I'm not sure. I think that a band really exists if they never play live. You know what I mean?
for
It's like-
sure. Yeah. I agree
to
with
be
that.
honest with you, speaking of that, I got to say this. I actually belong to. I think there are musicians who think that if you would have to choose. Let me ask you this: if you would have to choose, would you choose for the rest of your life? Would you choose only to play live or to record in a studio? If you would have to choose between those two,
Oh, live.
live. And I think that majority of musicians would answer live.
I think so. too.
Nowadays, I'm not sure I would add. I love playing live, but there's nothing. I don't know if there's anything as beautiful as being in the studio and creating music. Creating that music is like that almost brings to me the most joy of anything. And I love being on stage. I didn't mean that, but it's like, I don't know. I couldn't live without creating music in the studio.
I guess my way of creating music nowadays, which is largely based on what we do in organic, is hooked on the fact that we do it live.
Exactly. Because I know you also jam in the live sense, right?
And we for instance, we did a lot of, when we did gigs, we did a lot of improv and just find some beats together, and we really sort of look for that nerve of the moment, and also when we go into the studio and record, which is what we've mostly been doing the last, I guess, 5 years, we still always try to create from a point of, for instance, the drummer Tony starts something and I try to comment that
That's
on
really
the
nice.
keys, or vice versa, and just finding that from a jamming point of view, and not I have this hook kind of
exactly.
thing.
Which is more my kind of.
Oh, it is like from riff based and
modus.
stuff.
It's more like I write a song and then I want to record the song and I see what the song wants to become.
Yeah,
and then we try our best to make it into that song.
Exactly.
And after that, I start thinking, how should we do this live? You know. I didn't used to do that. I thought in a different way in younger days. I did more raw kind of. I had a more raw approach in the studio. But I love working with songs in the studio, see what they can become, and I love this surprise. The surprise of it, like now, especially working with Daniel on this new album. There's been so much. The moment of surprise has been such a big part of it. Like we've kind of tried to all the time trust in those kind of leads that we get that we didn't know were there, like signals, like magical signs that we should go here.
Yeah.
And so many of the songs turned out, like Dad Bod Rock God.
Yeah.
That was definitely not the song that I came up with at home. It like kind of reshaped completely in the studio. And it was pretty nice because that was like one of those songs that was a real maze. I didn't know what to do with it. I wasn't sure what I thought about it. But as soon as we got the idea, the final idea of what we should do, it kind of just everything fell in place. I think that's a magical thing.
Yeah, and we're actors as well. I think
it's the same thing. It's a similar thing.
Being open to following an impulse,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
and also having the state of mind of maybe rejecting or maybe handling impulses. Like that's a stupid idea. Maybe we take that impulse and tweak it somewhat.
Wonderful.
That would be a sort of baseline for improvisational
I think so.
creating. But that can happen over days or weeks in the studio. I just like it now, but more.
Yeah, you're right. And a lot of the practice that you need in your life is practice to kind of silence everything else than following that impulse. You know, like that's what you become better at somehow.
Yeah, for sure.
So where do you want those surprise? Of course, you don't want them to lead you anywhere because they're surprises, right? But if you could wish a bit, where would you like them to lead you in the coming years of your life? What would you like to see happen with like your acting, your music? What would be like your dreams come true?
I've actually had somewhat of a crisis because I've right now I don't really have a goal in life because I somewhat reached my goal, and I the bar was pretty low, and it was finish the theater academy.
Surviving till 30.
Yeah, surviving like finishing theater academy and just living on freelancing with the acting and the music and the theater, and I'm doing it. I've been doing it for 3 years.
But it brings you joy. Tremendous joy.
Among other things, yeah.
Among other things.
yeah. It's not. I guess nowadays it's more about I'd like to find some room for creativity, more room for creativity.
Yeah.
I mean, and room to work and maybe not stress about the dog needing a walk, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So but that's more of a structural thing. But with my creations, I like to shake people up in the theater field. At least that's what I want to do, is to shake stuff up.
With the music too?
The music I view in a bit of a different way. I think it has something to do with the fact that the market is somehow different. You consume music, or at least the music I am part in creating, in a much more structured way, like you find us on Spotify or something, and then you have to choose us in a way that a theater piece could more be surprising in a more visceral way.
Attack someone in the middle of the night.
Yeah, the way that music
has to be found or actively selected.
Yeah, it has to be found. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And I just really like digging into, like, insisting with our music. I like to insist on the choices we make with sounds. Also insisting on, no, that idea is great. You don't have to jazz it up, add flavor notes like sevenths and sixths.
Exactly.
And just that it's if it's good, like James Brown said, if it's good, then it's good.
Yeah. Why make something anything else than it has to be? Like, if it's there, it's there.
Yeah,
that's what you should kind of give
yeah,
birth to.
and I think I want to follow that more.
And it's nice,
like intuitive creation.
Wonderful. Well, Joel, I'm not sure if we found any answers to how to make the world better, but I think you gave me hope in many ways, and actually I'm really happy about what you said about bands too. That was what I'm taking with me from today, among other things.
For sure, they're coming back.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I'm so happy that you were here, Joel, and
thank you for having me.
And I wish you all the best with your ventures.
Thank you. You too.